Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on your time zone, and welcome everyone to Nightlight. Welcome Lightworkers, light body energies, seekers of the light, watchers, wardens, indigos, soothsayers, mystics, questers and clearance, journeymen and journeyers, seekers, star children and philosophers, and all those seeking reason and magic in these times of awakening, evolution, and transformation. I'm Barb DeLong, your host, and I invite you to come in out of the mainstream and gather around my nightlight in the darkness and confusion of the times. My show represents a sort of pit stop on your cosmic journey, so sit back and share your light with other light-minded people. Gather for a time and be sheltered from the storms of evolution and change. This is my own very small oasis in the turmoil that we call creation. Share with me your light. I'll share mine with you, and with any luck we can generate enough light to not only light our ways, but provide enough light for others who are seeking as well. These journeys that we're on began a very long time ago and will continue long after this lifetime has faded into memory. So gathering together as we do every week generates energy that can and is drawn on by countless others. Coming together and blending our lights creates energy that serves not only ourselves, but humanity as well. If you want to learn more about me, I invite you to visit my website, barbaradelong.com. There's a ton of information there, as well as links to all of the other endeavors that I am connected to, which are frighteningly too numerous to mention. And there's also information on the other shows that I do, of which I'm very honored to be included in. Today, my guest is somebody that I am also honored to have on the show, and I have one of the most unique experiences ever. I have my husband on mute. So if any of you want to see what that feels like, get your own show and have your husband on it as a guest and know that he can't talk until you open his microphone. But having his microphone shut does give me an opportunity to tell you a little bit about him. I am very biased, obviously, but he is an amazing man. He has almost, I would say, a photographic memory, if not one, and he is a biblical theologian. And I've asked him to come on the show tonight because, today, because there have been things that have been concerning me about lightworkers, and lightworkers all over the world have been bombarded with threats, with accusations, with all sorts of charges that we are not doing the work of God, that we are going against the Bible, and I couldn't think of a more logical person to take these questions and these accusations to than to someone like my husband who conveniently is available for me today. So without further ado, I will unmute you, Patrick. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm glad you're here today to help me with this dilemma that lightworkers seem to have been running into for a very long time. But before we get into you giving the nuts and bolts of all of this, you want to share a little bit about your background so that people will understand that you come here today with a great deal of authority in wisdom that you've gathered over the years?
Well, basically, I am a biblical theologian. I'm published in the field. I'm recognized by the Religious News Writers Foundation as a untraditional biblical scholar, non-traditional biblical scholar. But I got my start in the Baptist Church, in the American Baptist Church. Everybody heard about the Southern Baptist, but not too many people have heard about the American Baptist. Pretty much cut from the same cloth, but what was interesting about my situation was that I was going to become the youngest ordained minister in the history of the American Baptist Convention or the Southern Baptist Convention. They were going to get me ordained at the ripe old age of 16, and I would become an associate pastor at the church that was sponsoring me in seminary. Needless to say, I didn't make it that far. I made it to the end of the program when you were allowed to question, and unfortunately my questions were not acceptable. I won't go into the details of that, but it was a long, drawn-out situation, and eventually, within, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood, about 3 months, I joined the Navy, and I was gone. Very convenient way to get out of a situation that you've been tied up into. But I questioned a lot of the beliefs of the church, and among those beliefs that disturbed me most were solid and very well-entrenched racial bias, sexism. Homophobia was, without question, very much a part of the beliefs of the Baptist Church. Belief that God condemned the poor and the infirmed and was punishing them for not being good stewards. And you didn't believe, you didn't believe that people were victims of circumstance of the world around them, but that God somehow secretly had raised his hand against these people and was preventing them from making any money or things like that. And that war was good and peacemakers were a danger to society. And then, of course, there's always this unforgiving and horribly vengeful God. On that last point, Darwin had the same problem. Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, which is probably the church's biggest nemesis, and they created it because they had this idea that this God that they worshipped, if he didn't like what you did, or if you weren't doing it in the correct way, or if you somehow did not follow all the rules that were on this long list that changed from pulpit to pulpit, that this God would condemn you to a ever-burning hell where demons would be poking you with pitchforks while you were burning in an unquenchable fire, and the torture would be so bad that it was always cast in the terms of unimaginably horrible. And this God did this for one reason and one reason only, because that seemed to be what he always said his only purpose on this earth was, because he loved mankind. So that's the way he treated him, and it didn't make any sense. The only thing that really didn't bother me about the church was the condemnation of the paranormal, basically because I was born and raised in Texas, and paranormal was about as far as you could get from Texas. Nobody ever talked about it. Anything strange was obviously satanic or otherwise, but nothing was really said about it, so I didn't really care about it. And then after I left the church, I spent decades learning the real difference between the truths that had been hidden from mankind and the lies that academia, science very, very much, and the church as well, were forcing us to learn. And that all people are part of a bigger family, and that loving your fellow travelers on this planet was not only the only right way to live, but actually the key to the true destiny of mankind. Eventually, I began to publish my work on these enigmas, and that resulted in several books, documentaries, and videos, literally scores of published articles, hundreds of radio appearances, and websites containing many thousands of pages of research. And all that research was either directly or indirectly related to the concept of what we call spiritual, also known as the paranormal. Now, as an independent theologian, I was not burdened, I call myself an autonomous theologian, I was not burdened by that millstone around my neck that Jesus described to the Sadducees and the Pharisees when he said, you have put this burden on your children, yourself and your children, and neither you nor your forefathers before you was ever able to carry such a heavy weight. So I simply threw that weight off and was able to approach the theological world with an open mind. I did not have to prove that I was right. I did not have to prove that everybody else was wrong. All I had to do was study it. And what I found, in fact, was not the differences that you will see and you'll hear about all the time, but actually the incredible similarities. And because of that, my belief system, though I presented it in literally millions of words, breaks down to a simple and singular belief that mankind has a higher calling while has an incredible destiny after life on this rock, but a higher calling while we're here, and that is to love one another as though we were all one family. Barbara and I both published independently the incredible number of religions that all have the golden rule in them. And it's absolutely fascinating that they all talk about the same thing.
And I think one of the fascinating things is that you come from the paranormal background, and I come from the spiritual background. And when we got together, almost 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, actually, we found that our philosophies dovetailed. That we may have come from them from different directions, and yet we both came to the conclusion that not only is love the only way that we are ever going to make sense out of this lifetime and lifetimes to come, but that's one area that we don't necessarily agree on, but that we're here for a purpose, and that we are, and we are more than we know. We are more than we are claiming, and that there is more inside of us to utilize within this earth realm than oftentimes people claim or use, and the charge for that is actually in the Bible. And one of the things that I have run into over the years, and a lot of other light workers have, is that they say that the Bible condemns us, and in all actuality that isn't the case.
No. And you are absolutely right. We are on the same journey. We're just simply approaching it from different routes. Mm-hmm. We have the same goal because we know what's at the end of the light. We just at the end of the rainbow, as it were. Well, you see, that's what happened is because of my studies. When I started studying the Bible, I found that a great deal of it was involved with the paranormal. And among those was UFOs, and my website, the Bible UFO Connection, is not only the most extensive database on UFOs in the Bible, but my research has uncovered a wealth of information about all those things paranormal in the Bible. And I was telling you about the origin of that this morning, why I eventually got around to that. It's a little bit too complicated, but I wrote this article called The Bible and the Paranormal, A New Perspective. And I'd like to read just the opening of that article.
Okay.
And by the way, Barbara and I are going to turn that article into a book shortly. It's already 10,000 pages, 10,000 words. We just need to add a few thousand more, and it'll be a nice little book. Ghosts, witches, and wizards, sorcery, enchantment, divination, evil and unclean spirits, conjuring up the dead, trances, astrology, oracles, superhuman strength, awesome giants, fearsome dragons, and powerful unicorns are but a few of the many instances of paranormal phenomena found in the Bible. And those are, by the way, the most common things that are understood. Some of the lesser-known anomalies in Scripture are, and this deals with what we're talking about in more in your area, levitation, astral projection, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, telepathy, metamorphosis, glossalia, behemoths, satyrs, cockatrices, fiery flying serpents, and a gigantic and terrifying, fire-breathing, smoke-snorting, stone-hearted, indestructible, amphibious sea monster. And those that, and I swear it's absolutely amazing the number of things. If you just took these and put them all out, and I've got, like I say, I've got an article of 10,000 words about just those things, and we have enough material because of that as a foundation to make an entire book. Now, with that as a preface, I would like to point out some of the very serious realities about the paranormal and the spiritual concepts of this world. Our fables and histories, religions, our books, our movies, our documentaries, and even the fairy tales we tell our children are full of paranormal and spiritual concepts. We discuss it in our everyday lives, in the stories on our television screens and from radios, and on the Internet reinforce the reality that these things do exist and in no small number. Generally, it's just accepted and sometimes encountered, except by a large and very vocal group, the mainstream Christian church. Now, you as a psychic or a spiritual empath are condemned by that church. Anybody who believes in the earth religions is condemned. Witches, anybody who believes that they have any special powers, psychic or otherwise, the power to heal. Reiki, I'm sure, would be condemned as a satanic tool.
Yeah, I want to just interrupt slightly and point out to everybody listening, it is not the Bible condemning these things. It is the church, and the church today is not necessarily a representative of what the Bible described.
Right. Well, thanks to the church, we know that all these things that are paranormal or of an unorthodox spiritual nature, it's not just that they're wrong, they are demonic, satanic, and evil in every way. And if the church was so pure where I was from, we didn't even talk about those things. They didn't even, they were so far from us, so much away. But that's only what they say. That is not what the Bible says. In fact, the reason that we're having this discussion right now was an interesting thing that came up. I am part of a discussion group that has been desperately trying to combine Orthodox Christian beliefs with their perceived roles as lightworkers. That's certainly not a marriage made in heaven, but then I not only do not believe that marriage was made in heaven, I don't believe in heaven. They asked what they asked me were if 3 verses of the Bible condemned them as light workers to eternal torture and suffering in an unimaginable hell, something else I do not believe in. I do not believe the Bible describes, discusses, or condemns any human beings to a place of eternal torture either. That's a real ridiculous concept from a God that supposedly loves you. These are the verses they thought meant hell was their just reward. Actually, for the good that they felt that they were doing, they thought that they were going to be condemned. Now, this is what they sent me, and this is a verse in Deuteronomy. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Now that's from the 18th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, verses 9 through 11. That's only 3 verses, and it appears to condemn every single thing that people generally believe are the proper the things that they practice.
Yeah.
Now, this chapter, the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy, is basically the holy grail, believe it or not, for all witch hunters and inquisitors of our modern era. It appears to be a clear damnation of everything that may even seem to be related to the occult arts, New Age practices, or anything not dripping with Christian approval.
Uh-huh.
Now, as with all things theological or doctrinal, the church simply takes this literally, though ignoring other very obvious literal realities in Scriptures. Now, if you need condemnation for divination, witches and wizards, charmers and enchanters, conjurers, necromancers, and even cloud readers,
yes,
or worshipers of Moloch, we had to look that up.
Yes, we did.
Amazing. And worshippers of Moloch, then Deuteronomy 18 is basically your ticket. It's what you need, because there it is. It's all condemned, all in one neat little package. What may be even more revealing, however, is that the restrictions presented in these verses refer to a very strange race of beings. Remember, it starts out it's very clear, when you are come into the land which the Lord God giveth you, thou shalt not to do after the abominations of those nations. So it is clearly, basically, talking about a strange race of beings that live in this land that they are given. Now, let me preface this with some background information. It's very important that people understand this. This is an incident that occurred at the end of the 40-year Exodus that everybody knows about from Sunday school. So that's basically what this is. The nation of Israel, which was probably at that time somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 million people, had been going through on this 40-year journey, and at the end of the 40-year journey, everybody knows that God had promised that he would take them to the land of milk and honey. Now, we'll go further into this to explain. I have to get a little detail in this so you'll understand exactly what this is about. So what is happening is and remember, this is 3,300 years ago. This language that we are getting this from, this book of Deuteronomy, was written in the ancient Hebrew language, right? Then it was translated into Latin. Then it was translated from Latin into Old English, which was the King James Bible. That's the only Bible that I use, because anything else is just a translation of a translation of a translation. One translation removed that I don't prefer to go to. So basically, I just only read that book, and it was written in Hebrew 3,300 years ago. So first off, let's consider all these things that they're talking about. How can we even imagine that they are exactly what we believe them to be? Because now our language, our culture, everything about us has changed dramatically over that 3,300-year period. We have to keep that in mind. These commands are given to an ancient Hebrew nation. And I'm curious how relevant that is to non-Hebrews 33 years later.
33, how many years later?
33 centuries later.
Okay.
What did they say, 33 years?
Yeah.
33 centuries later. That is something that people really have to think about. Why are you, you're not Hebrew, and most of the people we're talking to are not Hebrew. They're not Jews. You got to be of the tribe of Israel, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, to be Hebrew. And he's talking to the Hebrew nation, and remember the 10 Commandments, and there's actually 600 of them. The 10 Commandments are only 10 of the 600 that you hear about. The other ones they don't want to talk about because they're not exactly things that you really want to share in a public venue. Some of them are very, very harsh laws. But they're talking to the nation of Israel. We have to consider that. Now, in order to properly understand what is being described in these verses, one has to have a partial understanding of what is being discussed. The Hebrews are being told not to follow the beliefs of a people that occupied the land they have just been given. The peoples whose beliefs they are being warned not to copy must be known who they were and what is this land that God gave them. We're going to have to take each verse very carefully and tear this apart, but we'll get this done very quickly. Where are they? Deuteronomy 18:9, when thou art coming to the land of the Lord thy giveth thee, here God is telling the Hebrew nation that it must not follow the practices of the nations they found in the land that God gave them. This was an obvious reference to the land of milk and honey. They were promised after that 40-year journey that we know as the Exodus. And so many believe incorrectly that the Hebrews never found that land, but it is there. This is the way it's basically described. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men, that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. So obviously we've identified that's the land that they're talking about, and the people that are in that land are the people that God is saying you shouldn't follow. Of every tribe of their follow shall you send a man, every one of the ruler of them. So they're basically getting the most important people. All of the men that were on this basically what they're doing is they're sending a search party into this land to see what it's about. The land God gave the Hebrew nation was Canaan. It was located in what is now, believe it or not, the heavily volatile and disputed area known as Palestine. Definitely not the land of milk and honey, but it was at that time. Now, this is what they said they found. Of course, it is a far cry from its original beauty now and the bounty, but even more interesting is the nature of people that inhabited that land. Here is what they said they found. And they told him and said, we came unto the land where you sent us, and surely it flows with milk and honey. And this is the fruit of it. And they had these incredibly large fruits and vegetables that they brought from the land. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities that are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak were there, and the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites. Let me jump through this so that we don't. Basically, it was saying all these people, these tribes were inhabiting this land called Canaan. Now, what is truly amazing is that the following verses. This is something that you would expect the church to absolutely. It's an amazing thing. But for the last 1,700 years, these verses have existed in English in the Bible, and nobody has paid any attention to them. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's just tall guys. That's just, they thought they were giants, but they were only like 7 or 8 feet tall, not quite. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. In other words, we felt like grasshoppers next to these guys, and they thought of us like grasshoppers next to them. So we're definitely talking about, even considering that this may have been an exaggeration, we have to presume that the giants must have been at least 3 times as large as a man, or between 15 and 20 feet tall. Now, this is the race of beings that God is telling these people not to follow. So, for starters, it's a very strange thing that human beings are even considered in this thing. Now, let me just go to actually what the 8 practices that they're talking about, and these are the most important things. The first word that they list is divination, which comes from the Hebrew word kosam, which literally means to distribute or determine by lot or magical scroll. Now, it should be noticed here at this point, now remember, this is 3,300 years ago, that the casting of lots may have been restricted, which is about 1300 BC, but that lots were acceptable in the time of the apostles. So in other words, divination was like throwing dice. You do gem casting, Barbara.
I do.
And there are a lot of things. People throw bones. They throw teeth. They throw. We're going to also do we got an interesting research project coming up about how many different ways divination occurs, and we found that the I Ching actually had a form of divination involved with it. But the most important thing, now remember, they are condemning this in 1300 BC, yet the same practice happened when the apostles were trying to determine who would replace Judas Iscariot. So it is condemned in the Old Testament, but acceptable in the New Testament because it said they cast lots to determine that Matthias would be that replacement. So how could you do something evil to determine something which is obviously so important to the ministry of Jesus. Anyway, so that's the first one. So that was very questionable. We can't really say that that's a very important, something that we really need to condemn. An observer of times is the next one, and this comes from the Hebrew word onan, which means to cover or to cloud over. Now we looked this up.
We did.
This seems to be referring to an ancient and very vague practice of cloud reading. Now you found that, didn't you?
I did, and I wish you'd warned me. I would have had it at my fingertips, but I don't. There is a form of divination that goes through the different kinds of clouds, and it does tell you more than weather. But I don't have it at my fingertips, Patrick.
Right. Well, that's okay, because there's not a whole lot of cloud readers around right now. Anyway.
No, but, yeah.
Yeah.
But anybody interested in...
ascertain now.
Yeah, anybody interested in all of those divinatory things, all you have to do is Google divination, and there are 16 pages of them there.
Yeah, and was this on Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wikipedia has 16 pages of types of divination. So the first one we know was apparently that they got over that, and they started using casting of lots. So that was okay. Then this one, nobody using it, so basically it's a moot point. So it doesn't really have anything to do with what we do in modern practice.
Well,
Enchanter is from the Hebrew word nakash, or nakash, which probably means to hiss or to whisper a spell, generally to prognosticate. Now, I want you to think about our society, okay? To prognosticate means to foretell from signs or symptoms or to predict. In our modern age, one would wonder who doesn't.
Well, wouldn't you
some
say
kind of prediction about everything from the weather to the performance of athletes.
Not only that, Patrick, but doctors are prognosticators.
Doctors are prognosticators. As to how evil such practices are today, I think that's strictly a matter of opinion now. When you talk about that, I mean, come on, you have to. Again, here's an important thing. Now, I'm gonna read this. And this is something that we all have to think about. The important thing that we have to think about, if we're talking about the Bible and what the Bible says about things, this is very important to consider. And you as a light, if you feel like you're a light worker, or you feel like you've somehow this is your place, then this is what you have to consider. There's a verse in Matthew that's very important that we all need to understand, that this is how the Bible looks at things and how Jesus looked at things. This is talking about Jesus, there was brought unto him one possessed with a devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him, insomuch that the blind and dumb both spake and saw. If that isn't spiritual healing, I don't know what is. Okay?
Yeah.
And all the people were amazed and said, "Is this not the son of David?" In other words, this young man his mother was of the tribe of David, so he's of that line. But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "This fellow does not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of devils." And Jesus knew their thoughts and said unto them, now this is very important, you have to consider, he's very right about this, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And if by Beelzebub cast out devils, if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Wherefore, They shall be your judges. And if I cast out devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God is coming to you, blah, blah, blah. So he's basically saying that if you're doing good, how can you be doing Satan's work? If you, Barbara, as an individual, feel like you are doing good for your fellow man, how can the author of evil, according to the church, and the person who hates humanity the most, how can he possibly be on your side? How can you be condemned for that? And as a matter of fact, there are verses in the Bible, and I won't belabor the point, there are verses in the Bible that very clearly say that when Jesus, the disciples came to Jesus and they said, there is a man out here, he's casting out demons and he's not doing it in your name. And Jesus said, so, if he's not doing anything wrong, if he's only doing good stuff, how can that be wrong? And who cares whose name he's doing it in? He's doing it. Now think about that. Think about the fact that they cannot condemn you in the actual spirit of their convictions, according to what Jesus himself said, that you cannot condemn somebody who's casting out, who's trying to get rid of evil, and in our world, greed is evil, and everything that you do, Barbara, everything that you share with your listeners is love and care and concern, and you don't condemn other people, you don't try to get people to do evil things, you try to get people to do good things, and most everybody that I've heard that is in the spiritual realm has that at the heart. Do you or do you not believe that love is the key to all things?
Oh, absolutely.
And how can you be of Satan if you believe that?
Don't think it's possible, Patrick.
So, there you go. I mean, if anything, there's a generic thing right there. Now, here it is, and if we really want to know what it's all about, here it is. If you're confused about whether what you're doing is right or wrong, here's the test. Jesus was approached by an attorney of the law, and he was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Now, that confrontation appears 4 times in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In 3 of those, he says, love God and love your fellow man as yourself, and these 2 are one. One is equal with the other, which is basically saying, in the way that he described it, and theologians agree that what he's saying is very simple, that you cannot love your fellow man without loving God, and you can't love God without loving your fellow man. And in one verse, it actually eliminates God from the equation. It says simply, love your fellow man as yourself, which is what? It's the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. So if you ever have any questions about whether what you're doing is wrong biblically, let's talk about what Jesus said. He said, on that law of love hang all of the laws and all of the prophecies, so it doesn't make any difference. You don't have to know the name of Jesus to be doing an incredible work in the name of God. You just don't need it. And that's basically what he himself said. And you not only don't condemn people for what they're doing, but don't even try to interfere with them because they're doing a good thing. So you, and by the same token, it works the same way, is that you should encourage people that are doing good things. And so that's the whole concept that anything that a light worker does, I mean, just the very concept of a light worker means that you are bringing light. What did he say? Bringing light is what? Bringing the truth. And he said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
Set you free, yes.
So that's what you do. How could you possibly be doing wrong? Shouldn't the church be praising you instead of condemning you? That's the whole point. It's exactly the opposite from what it should be.
Well, I think that a lot of people today, times are so busy. People are so overwhelmed with just keeping their heads above water that they like to be able to rely upon certain areas where they don't have to question. And unfortunately, it appears that one of the places we really need to question is interpretation of the Bible, because lots of things that people say are in the Bible are not, and things that are in the Bible, they're not talking about it. One of the things that upsets me so greatly is that so many of the things that light workers do, whether it is healing, whether it is speaking with spirits, whether it is, whatever it is, people, tend to think, oh, that's condemned, but clearly not only is it in the Bible, but Jesus said all these things and more will you do, and he was not talking to disciples or apostles, he was talking to the masses.
Absolutely no question about it. It's unbelievable. The next word that is used in that description is which. And every one of these reveals something new. Every one of these words reveals something new that you never considered. But this all comes from very serious study. This is these definitions come from Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. James Strong in the 1880s decided that he would do something. The King James Bible was written in 4 years, was translated in 4 years by 57 men. Only 48 of them completed it, and not a one of them was ever paid. So that's that was a very bad record. So James Strong, Dr. James Strong, took it upon himself to go through the Bible. He hired 100 men that were, of course, men. Women didn't do that sort of thing back then.
Would have been faster if he had.
Absolutely, probably. These were linguists, historians, and researchers of the ages, of the various ages in which the Bible was written. It's generally believed that these writings took place about 3,300 during the time of Moses, was when the Bible was the books of the Bible were first written. So we're talking 3,300 years ago, and they had to cover that. And what he did, and he took 35 years, and what he did was he found what every word meant as closely as they could possibly get it to the original languages, and put the definitions in, so where we have a word like which, we know exactly what it meant then when it was being talked about, and this was actually probably 3,300 years ago when these words that I'm speaking, it has been declared after all these years, after over a century of scrutiny, that it is still considered to be 99.7% accurate. It's an amazing book. So when it says, so when I need to know what the word which means, I go to Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, and this tells me that the word which comes from the word kashaf, which means to whisper a spell or to incant or practice magic. Now, first, unbelievably, even though witches, you think witches were all over the place in the Bible, the word witch only appears twice. With the strong focus by the church on witches over the ages, one would think that the Bible was filled with their dastardly deeds. But that is not the reality. And this does not refer to an individual, I want you to notice. but a practice, which means that the Bible never mentions witches, never has, only magic. That, of course, brings us to the definition of magic. Now, guess what the Bible tells us about magic?
What?
Unfortunately, nothing, because the word magic does not even appear in the Bible. Okay? So we don't know what it means. We have no idea what it meant then. We don't know what it means now.
So kind of hard to damn it.
So, in other words, this is another moot point. We don't know what they were talking about. What is a practicer? What is the practice of magic? We don't know what it was. Now, we can presume that it was something like what went on when Moses and Aaron went up against the magicians at court, but these weren't magicians. They weren't magic. They were just basically considered that. So anyway, again, we've got a very confusing thing, and we cannot say that anybody that we know practices magic because the word doesn't appear in the Bible, therefore we don't know what it meant in the Hebrew back then. A charmer is the next one, and that's from the Hebrew word kabar, which means to join or specifically to fascinate. Again, there is no clear understanding theologically exactly what is meant by the term charmer, which is a root word, believe it or not. It is also used in other scripture to describe, now get this, fellowship, bringing couples together, and other normal and very acceptable concepts. So again, we have no idea what they're condemning because we don't know what the word charmer actually means in that connotation. Then there's a consulter with familiar spirits, from the Hebrew word sha'al, which means to inquire. And the word alb, pronounced obi, is properly to mumble, or a necromancer, or a ventriloquist. Again, it's rather confusing in its clear meaning, but it seems to refer to a conjurer, someone who talks to the dead. Now, the only other reference we have about conjurers was King Saul, who went to the quote-unquote witch at Endor. The word witch is never used in that connotation. She was a conjurer at Endor. He had condemned conjurers himself personally. And by the way, he was immediately dethroned, not long after he did that, by the way. And she had this conjurer at Endor conjure up the spirit of Samuel. Now, the only person that got upset about that one was Samuel. and he expressed his anger for being awakened, amazingly. But there's nothing in that description other than the fact that Saul himself had outlawed conjurers. Now, why it took Saul to outlaw conjurers when none of the kings of Israel had outlawed it before is an interesting thing, but there you go. So now, if the king of Israel can call up a conjurer, isn't it like, isn't that like do as I say, not as I do?
It sounds so, yes.
It doesn't quite work. So again, it's very confusing. Now we come to the word wizard. They're supposedly the male of the witch coven, so to speak. It's yidene from the Hebrew, and it properly means a knowing one, specifically a conjurer again, but by implication, it's a ghost. Now, although in our modern age, a wizard is to believe to be a male witch, this is not true. We cannot be sure whether this is referring to condemning one who summons a ghost or the ghost itself. So again, as you can see, it's very confusing. You cannot get a handle on any of this, mainly because, once again, we're dealing with a language that's 3,300 years old.
Right.
And what they're talking about, what was going on back then, and especially with a tribe of giants, we may not even have even the slightest idea. This may just be gibberish to us, and it certainly does sound like it. And
it does.
And then they condemned a necromancer, and that comes from the Hebrew darish, which is properly to tread or frequent, and the Hebrew word pronounced muth, to die. It comes from two words, which means to tread or frequent and to die. Along with the last two, this seems to be referring to communication with the dead. Again, it must be pointed out that Jesus actually raised the dead during his ministry, an uncounted number after his death. His apostles raised the dead. This is a little bit more serious than actually talking to them. They actually brought him up out of the grave.
Well, yeah, and you're talking something that was written before the time of Jesus, and then Jesus comes along and changes all the rules.
Yes. Okay.
But what wasn't Jesus the God of the Old Testament? So
Jesus, if you look in John 1, talks about the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and all things were made by the Word, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and he is clearly talking about Jesus Christ. Jesus was the God of the Old Testament.
So he matured?
No, we don't think
that's
the situation. I don't think he matured. I think the human race matured.
Okay.
Fascinating concept. But it seems as though a change happened. Not only, come on, this was a major event.
Oh, I see.
Now, again, we must emphasize that these things which are restricted in these verses are vague at best and confusing at worst.
Definitely.
Not surprising, considering that these are the practices of an ancient race of giants 3,300 years ago. We are not only unsure about what it is the Hebrews were told to avoid, but surely non-Hebrews must question why they are told why they must obey ancient Hebrew laws.
Good point.
If one tries to argue that all laws in the Bible must be followed, including those in Deuteronomy, then we have to ask, we've got a serious problem here, because now listen to this. Why haven't, if one tries to argue that all the laws in the Bible must be followed, including those in Deuteronomy, then why haven't they killed everyone who curses their parents or commits adultery? Any girl who is not a virgin or anyone caught working on Saturday? Why hasn't the government slaughtered every man, woman, and child in Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, Japan, Germany, or Vietnam, or for that matter, anyone with a different religion anywhere in the world? And why don't we allow slavery in this and every other country in the world? Why am I asking such ridiculous questions? It is because these and several other very harsh and bizarre laws are in that same Bible and were given directly to the Hebrew nation. So why aren't the Christians who claim we have to follow some of those laws, why aren't they following all of them? Are they simply hypocrites, or are they just picking and choosing which laws they want to follow?
But did not the coming of Jesus, didn't he say, forget everything else and just remember to love one another and you're fine?
Well, obviously, things are much important. Things are much, much more important than that. we, according to the church, if we're going to follow those laws, you cannot wear 2 articles of clothing of different types of cloth at the same time, and you can't plant more than one type of flower or vegetable in your garden, or you are condemned. So
I'm in trouble.
Okay, so let's get realistic here. If we are talking, if let's say this is a lesson in logic, A, you are not Hebrew. These laws were not given to you. And even if you were somehow or another, some brilliant magic Christian can tell you and convince you that you have to follow these laws, you damn well better follow all of them. And that means you will know how much you can sell your daughter or your son for, because it's written in that law.
Yeah, but Patrick,
yes.
Patrick, when the New Testament, Jesus, I mean, they asked him, and he said to ignore those old laws and to just follow love.
Exactly. But that's not what they tell you.
Well, I don't care what they tell you. What Jesus told us was to, stay out of trouble and take care of your neighbors and yourself.
Well, that was basically it. The word religion is a fascinating study, and of course this is what we're talking about. People don't realize that. The word, things like that, you think religion would be all over, since the Bible is obviously about religion. You'd think that it would be all over the place. The word religion only appears 5 times in the Bible. 4 of those times, it is talking about the Jewish religion, specifically about the religion of the Jews. The only time religion is defined is in the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 27 in the New Testament, and this is what it says. Pure religion and undefiled before God the Father is this. Now, when I make a prefacing statement like that, you know that the Bible is about to tell you what your religion should be. And here it is. To visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world, period. Nothing more, that's it. In other words, in layman's terms, the Bible says that pure religion, totally and completely acceptable to this God of the Christian world, is this. Take care of the needy and keep your nose clean. Keep yourself out of trouble. And that's the whole religion. That's a religion in a nutshell. And of course, Jesus said, love your fellow man, therefore you're going to be taking care of the needy if you love your fellow man, so that's a moot point in itself.
So really the Bible is not a religion.
No.
It's a way of life.
The Bible is a history book.
Yeah.
It's a big history book. And it chronicles a lot of UFOs and paranormal stuff. But it doesn't spend all of its time condemning you. And certainly, if you're not a Hebrew, I don't see why you have to follow Hebrew law. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, there are light workers who are of the Jewish faith.
Right. Then they can do. You see, here's the point. Is real life, you can do anything you want to. You can think and act any way that you want to.
Well, I think that what people actually condemn are the fact that, and I think it's important for people to understand, light workers, people who have gifts, people who speak with spirits or prognosticate or channel spirit for you, They don't have any talent or gift that is unusual. Everyone has that capability. It's not as though a light came down upon them at some point in time in their life and gave them a special gift. We all have that gift and that talent. Not everyone uses it. Not everyone has found it inside of themselves. But every spirit walking the planet at this moment in time has those capabilities.
Now, what do you think the church would say about a statement like that, Barbara?
Well, I'd burn in hell, certainly, but I don't believe in hell, so I'm pretty safe.
Well, let me read something to you. The disciples went out to exorcise a demon, and they couldn't do it. They didn't have enough power. So they brought the man to Jesus, and Jesus exorcised him. And then they came to him and asked him, said, "Why couldn't we do that?" And he said, "Because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if you have the faith of a grain of mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, remove thee hence to yonder place, and it shall remove." Now, everybody's heard that. Everybody's heard the mustard seed thing. It only takes a little bit of faith, and you can do anything. And he's talking about personal belief. And remember, he's talking to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
To human beings in front of him. These are disciples that were so weak that they couldn't even cast out a demon. And he tells them that they have enough inherent ability that if they only knew that they had it, if they only accepted that they had it in the slightest little pinch, there's 600 mustard seeds to the square inch, the slightest little bit, that they could move mountains. But here's the important thing. Everybody knows about that, but nobody ever listens to the last line of this verse, which said, "And nothing shall be impossible unto you." Now, is he saying that if you're not careful and you don't watch out, you're going to have, there's nothing that you can't do? He's going to say that he's actually chastising them to do it. Now, all those abilities that we just read condemned out of Deuteronomy 3,300 years ago, couldn't you, if you can do anything, couldn't you do all that stuff?
Absolutely.
Even if we took our own modern definition. So in other words, something's changed. Something really serious has changed. So in other words, the whole concept that I as a theologian, I can find very little in the Bible that's condemned. The litmus test is really clear. If you do something with the intent of defrauding somebody, you got a problem.
Yeah.
If you do something that is intended to take something away from somebody to enrich yourself, you've got a problem. But if you just go along and try to help people as best you can, and just try. The fact is, boys and girls, if you believe in salvation, remember Jesus died 2,000 years ago. Now, why do you have to do something or say something or be somewhere or give to something if Jesus already did all the work?
You know, there's one thing that doesn't exactly fall under the umbrella of what we were going to talk about today, but I think it's important for people to hear. We've all heard about hell a lot, and always been, always felt that it was a place that, where sinners, burned forever, plagued by demons and stuff like that. And you were talking the other day about hell, and that it actually was discovered.
That's a fascinating story.
Want to share it?
Yeah. Hold on just a second. I need to get this up. I'm gonna get this from the horse's mouth, my own website. The word most often used in the New Testament for hell is Gehenna. That's the way it's pronounced. It's Ghenna is the way it's written in English, but Gehenna is the word. And if you look in any lexicon, in any Hebrew lexicon or Greek lexicon, there's Greek and Aramaic in the New Testament, and Hebrew and Chaldee in the Old Testament. So in any Greek or Aramaic lexicon or dictionary, you will find that under the word Gehenna it says origin unknown. Nobody knew what it was. And this is the word that Jesus is using when he's talking about people being cast into the lake of fire, into the unquenchable fire. And theologians have all wondered about that because the word hell, the concept of hell, was a very prominent belief in the Jewish religion, of which Jesus was one. Jesus was a Jew. Now, so let's go and look at what he knew, what he was taught about this place called hell. Well, first off, it was generally believed to be a grave, a hole in the ground. That was Hades. You've heard that word. That's a Greek word. Hades. It means a pit, a hole in the ground. But every once in a while he'd use this word Gehenna. But there was an ethereal, a Kabbalistic view of heaven and hell, and they were both the same place. And it was this great land divided into two parts with a river running down the middle of it. And on one side, everybody owned their own property. They worked for a living. They had their own wealth, and they gathered things to themselves. And on the other side of the river, and that side was desolate, and it was unforgiving, and it was not a very pleasant place to be. And on the other side was a land where everybody was sharing everything, and they were all living communally, and they were all having a good time, and so on and so forth. And this seemed to be a prophecy of the future, which is exactly the way the church started out, as a communal existence after the ascension of Christ. But that on the other side it was bountiful and everybody was happy, but everybody was sharing over there, and that the only difference between the two was this river, which you could very easily cross over. The only thing about it was that when you crossed over the river, you couldn't bring anything with you. So you'd have to leave all your wealth behind and join the family that was on the other side and share with everybody. And so it was believed to be that the people, the rich people that were on one side, were miserable, while everybody on the other side was bountiful and having a good time. Now, that's what Jesus believed. But he kept using this reference to the word Gehenna. And this archaeologist was digging along a road one day, and he found a sign. Nobody knew anything about Gehenna, and he found a sign that said, Gehenna, this way. And an arrow pointing, it told him how many stadia he had to go, how many furlongs it was to get to Gehenna. So they followed this, and they found signs along the way that showed us they were getting close to Gehenna. And they found this place, then they found evidence that they were, in fact, in Gehenna. It was this valley that they found. And so they started digging, and they found the Jerusalem city dump. Now, he was talking about the place where children were burned in fire and there was gnashing of teeth and things like that, but it was actually a valley in which, now we heard about let's see, let me get the first of that. Where is it? Hold on. I need to get the first of that verse up. Anyway, it talks about the fact that they were passing their children through the fire. Their sons and daughters would have to pass through the fire. This was God Moloch, who was very, very well known in the ancient world, and apparently they had a ritual where you sacrificed your children to this god. And they were doing it, and it was such an abominable practice that when they were eventually able to shut them down, they completely condemned the land that this was done on, and the ovens in which the children were burned were actually still there. They actually found them. They were still there. They didn't touch them. They went away, and they just started throwing their trash there because that was the best. And of course, trash accumulates, and when it got too big, they started burning it. And sure enough, they dug down, and there was still fire down there. And their estimates were that that fire, because of the fact that it would be feeding upon itself, basically would never go out. It was an unquenchable fire. So it turns out that hell, by Jesus' terms, where he was talking about anything that had to do with fire, was the Jerusalem city dump.
Wow.
So, and there's all kinds of stories about that kind of thing. Heaven, a classic example. Heaven appears 730 times in the Bible, and every time it appears, with the exception of 6 other translations which don't have anything to do with a divine retirement home, it comes from the word sky. Where it appears in the Old Testament, it comes from the word shamayim, which means the sky, the place where the clouds are. This is heaven, the word heaven, wherever it's translated. From the word shamayim, it means the sky. And in the New Testament, it's the Aramaic word shamayin, just an M and an N difference at the end of the word, same word, means the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I found out that in the Old English, which was basically the English, the official language of the monarchy, which is why King James wrote the Bible in Old English, that in fact, if somebody came out and saw beautiful clouds in the sky, they wouldn't say, "Oh, what a beautiful sky." They'd say, "What a beautiful heaven." Heaven meant the sky. There is no divine retirement home. It doesn't exist. When you look in the Bible, I can probably get almost everybody on the planet. The meek shall inherit what?
The earth.
Thank you. Not heaven, the earth. And then why would we want to go join Jesus in heaven after he returns when it says very clearly that he's going to rule here for 1,000 years on earth? The nations, rule the nations with a rod of iron. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
You want to go to heaven to be with him. I think you'd want to stay here if you wanted to be with him. So it's all and pretty much everything that the church tells you. And so here we've got people that are stressed out because they believe that they're being condemned by the church, but that's it. They are being condemned by the church, but not by the Bible, which is supposedly the document on which the church bases its beliefs.
Yeah, I think that I would consider myself a light worker.
Yes.
And there are times, and light worker in that I believe that the work I do brings peace and love to the people that I am working with, so that I share my concept of the light, and that is the love that is within all of us. And I would believe that most people who would say they were light workers fundamentally have the same definition I do. I don't think I'm unique in that. And anyone who is very much into the Bible will condemn us. Will say that we're not doing God's work. We're not doing the work of the Lord. And we get a lot of flack. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who are fundamental Christians. We're born again, and they really do believe that I am not going to go anywhere when I die except to some nursery school for becoming a better Christian. And oftentimes my comment has been, I think that I'm more Christian than you are because of how I live my life. And I think that this is something that a lot of us are coming up against lately. There seems to be a resurgence in people condemning those that are not following what the church says. And I think the church is something that that doesn't have anything to do with spirituality anymore, unfortunately.
Well, where do you think you're going to go, Barbara?
When I die?
Yeah.
If I die,
yeah.
I think I will make a transition into another dimension where hopefully there is a greater amount of love and caring and sharing than there is here on this plane. But I think what we do on this plane does affect us on the other side. I think that I don't think you can, be horrible and not have to at least see and experience the pain that you may have caused to other people. So I think I go to another dimension. I think that everyone who dies goes to that dimension, and it's a place in which I think we have greater awareness as to ourselves and our realities and what we've done, and hopefully we become even better. Your
kids believe that you're not going to go to heaven.
Yeah, I don't have a reservation as far as they're concerned.
Psalms 90:10. The days of our lives are 80 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet it is strength and labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off. This is basically saying that we live for 70 years and 80 years if we're strong.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of labor and a lot of sorrow in life, and it is soon cut off. The last 4 words of this verse in Psalms 90:10 is exactly what the Bible says. The only thing the Bible says, what happens to you immediately after you die. And here they are. And we fly away. Now, everybody we've talked to that has died
yes.
has said,
and come back.
Has said they did what?
Well, they flew. They flew to the light. They all, I think you're talking the near-death experience people
right.
that we've talked to, and every single one of them, without, they all say the exact same thing. They flew. They were drawn upward out of their bodies. They could look back and see their bodies, and they kept going through the buildings, through the construction, into the sky, and, kind of like Peter Pan almost, and that they were surrounded by loved ones and that they were sent back. And they weren't happy because they
didn't want to come back.
No, absolutely not. I think the one girl that we interviewed that had tried to commit suicide, she was emphatic that she wasn't surrounded by love and she wasn't embraced by love. She was love. And it changed her life profoundly.
To say something like that, you had to have been there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm rather glad I wasn't, but...
unfortunately, they, everybody that we've talked to, and Lynn Katai, who will be with us on Friday, she came and gave us her testimony about her personal near-death experience.
Yeah, she'll be with us at 11 o'clock on Friday morning, and we will be rebroadcasting that show at 8 o'clock at night.
Right. But that's and she's talking about the Phoenix Lights again. This is still now I can guarantee you it's the way the church is approaching us, the way they deal with their people is unbelievable. When you consider let's take the concept of serving others, which is this whole concept of do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Yeah.
Let's take this to a higher, excuse me, and more realistic level. How does it really affect us, and how does it fit into what we know about human nature? Fortunately, a group of social scientists and anthropologists recently did an in-depth scientific study to find out what actually makes us happy. Now, this is sports, relaxation, sex, work, entertainment, artistic endeavors, religion, gambling, everything. And they were shocked because they found that serving others was not only far and away the top thing that made us happy, but it had the longest lasting effect, often lasting days and weeks. And I mean, that's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's everything. Everything that they did. And children, think about this, are hardwired to share from birth, not seeing sharing before the age of 2 is actually considered completely abnormal behavior. Now think about that. Our children are telling us where we should be. Our scientists are telling us that that's what makes us the happiest. It's unbelievable. Children are also naturally socially empathic. And imagine if you just, it's a hard thought, but go in and pinch a kid in a room full of kids and that kid starts crying, every kid in that room is going to start crying.
Oh, absolutely. Because
they're empathic. This actually strengthens in our later years. We see that those who are in the service professions, like police officers actually, and firemen and first responders, people who are actually out there on the line helping people. I was in the social service organization. I was working for a homeless organization that felt extreme satisfaction. It took very low pay for what I did because I believed, I was very happy knowing that I was serving other people. And then again, we have James 1:27, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. In other words, and then the greatest commandment is love. Come on, this is right up our alley. Exactly what we wanted, what makes us happy. It makes us the happiest for the longest period of time. It's satisfying if we feel like we need to serve this God somehow or another. Then that's the way to do it, and you're not going to have any more fun and have closer relationships with people than doing that. I know that for a fact. I mean, I've been there. We must think of every human as close as we do our own family, and it is only then that we truly walk in the light. It's the only way to do it. We have to turn outward. Our light does not show when it's focused inward. It only shows when it's focused outward.
Exactly.
And so that's the way that's what this is all about. And of course, to condemn anybody. You see, remember this same Jesus said, "Judge not, lest you be judged." If you're condemning people that are doing good things, you got a problem. And look at this, look at the arguments that we're seeing in this presidential debate. It's unbelievable, the cold and callousness that we're seeing from people, which doesn't make any sense. You don't want to, and calling people names and condemning people. That's not the way. That's not what our mommy told us to do.
No.
No, then what did she do? What did our mothers tell us? Our mothers told us, share your toys. Be nice to people. Help people out. Be friendly. Not start wars and build big edifices to this God that you claim you're serving.
No, I think that it's totally gotten out of control, and I think politics is just one of the worst places it is. But as far as people who are trying, and there are uncountable numbers out there of people who are genuinely trying to share their energy, to spiritually open themselves up to a greater reality, to awaken gifts and talents they have inside of themselves. The number of people in my field and interested in my field are growing exponentially. I mean, it's profound, the number of people that are turning away from organized religion, and that doesn't mean they're not religious. I mean, everyone, if they want a religious, if they want a religion and if it's important to them, then absolutely you follow that religion. Spirituality is something that goes right beside it. It's how you live your life. It's how you apply your concepts and beliefs to your life. We're coming to a time when people are beginning to realize that a religious / spiritual belief system and practice is not something done just once a week on Sunday for 2 hours in the pew. It's how you live your life, how you touch your fellow man, how you approach your reality, and how you stretch to link yourself to others, because we are a family. And that's I think the biggest message that has to get out there, and the thing that is the hardest to spread, especially when there are wars. I mean, I understand politically there are reasons for these wars. I don't understand humanely why we fight with one another. It just doesn't make sense to me. This is a very big planet, and it has room for everybody, and there are resources for everybody. I don't understand why people are starving, and I don't understand why people are in poverty, because this is a rich planet. It can provide for everyone abundantly if we work together. I'm on a stove.
Nice. The only way to do it, if everybody, what's amazing, if everybody in the world paid a simple 10% tax, and honestly paid it, all the rich people and all the poor people paid a 10% tax, we'd have 3 times more money. When most of us paid 27% of the tax, of our taxes, that's the average, 27%. So you can imagine how much the rich are not paying when all the poor people are paying on an average of 27%.
Yeah. No, I think that, and government is another thing. I don't understand. I look at what's going on today, and I think, frankly, if Jesus were around, I think he'd be horrified. He'd take the first ship off the planet, because we're not in any way, though we are technologically advanced, we sure as heck haven't gone much beyond kindergarten as far as faith and love, compassion, and sharing have gone. And you take a look at what our government is doing, what politicians are doing. I'm horrified. I mean, I know you are watching it carefully and you're understanding it all, and I am running for a closet because it's horrible, and it offends me so greatly that you see these very wealthy men running and spending millions and millions of dollars to trash another human being. Those millions could have gone to the poor and needy in this country, and we would be in far greater shape. When they talk about all of the money they are spending to tear apart the character of another person, when that, I would vote for any politician out there who had $200 or $400 million sitting in bank accounts all around the world. If he said, instead of doing any sort of advertising, I'm going to just give it to the poor, take care of the needy, and if you elect me, I'll do my best to do the same all around the world, he'd have my vote in a minute.
He'd probably have everybody else's vote.
Well,
I believe this concept that humans are basically evil came from the young and lovely Sigmund Freud, who kept his son in prison and was a disgusting human being all the way around. And condemned as a real radical and charlatan of his day, and then sent his, I believe it was his grandson or his nephew over here, Edward Bernays, who became the father of modern public relations. We have been told that humans are basically evil, and of course that the Nazi Holocaust was proof of that, and the killing fields are proof of that. I don't necessarily believe that at all. I don't believe that humans are inherently evil. I believe that if we were given a chance, we'd actually make the right decisions. That's what we need. We need the ability to make the decisions.
And we don't need people making it for us.
Well,
no. I have listened for, it feels like weeks. It may not be that much, but I have listened to grown men arguing over birth control pills when there is so much else wrong with this world. I just am so offended by all of this. I just cannot believe that our system of government and campaigning is down to whether or not a woman has the right to have a birth control pill. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's the world is just, for me, politics is caving in on itself, and I am.
Well, to their credit, at least a dozen people have, a dozen advertisers have pulled out of Rush Limbaugh's shows, and two radio stations have dropped him from their lineup. He is the he's the highest paid radio broadcaster, and since 1991 has had the best, the highest ratings far and away of any of the talk show hosts. He's going down.
Well,
he claims that he's going to be able to survive this. I don't know how you're going to survive without advertisers.
Well, what gets me is he's only number one. It's like those shows on TV that have people fighting with each other. They're I don't know why people enjoy that, but he is and he apologized and figures that's enough. No, it's not enough. You know, if somebody makes a living because they harangue people, they say horrible things about people, they accuse people of things that are not so, and then say I'm sorry, no, that doesn't float with me. And you know, and yeah, somebody in the chat room just said he was forced to apologize. Didn't even mean it when he, said he didn't mean it.
I would agree that probably is a situation. I know this man. I've been listening to him for years. I listen to I don't listen to him on a regular basis, but every time he says something, I pay attention to what he's saying because I know that he is the enemy. He is the enemy of the people. And it doesn't feel like there's a kind bone in his body. It really doesn't. All he does, he feeds on people. For all we know, he's a pussycat. For all we know, he's a sweetheart at home, and he's just loving it. The $50 million, if you got paid $50 million to be a total asshole, if you'll pardon the expression, you might decide to be a total asshole. And that's what he's doing. He gets paid $50 million. He just closed a contract for $450 million with Clear Channel.
There you go. Well, there's an audience. There's an audience for these people. There's an audience for people. They will find their audience, and there is an audience out there. Fear, anger, nastiness, cruelty sells, and love and hope, and faith, and caring, and charity don't sell as well.
Well, you got to think of it this way, Barbara. If it weren't for things like that, we wouldn't know first the depths to which humanity can sink. And secondly, we really wouldn't know how good it is not to feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel the song Amazing Grace. Do you know where that song came from?
No, I don't.
Would you believe that it was a captain of a slave ship that wrote that song?
That's phenomenal.
He had an epiphany. Look it up. Look it up. It's an absolutely fascinating story. He wrote it on his last voyage, I believe. It's an interesting story. I should look that up, but it's an absolutely fascinating story. And the words are so touching to that song, and that's why I think he was probably touched by the hand of God. If God can reach that far.
Well, I think God has a hand as big as He needs to, but if indeed we are creations of the gods, and we must be going through one heck of a time of puberty here, and I think that if they don't have white hair yet, they will soon, because we've got to be really distressing them greatly with our behavior down here. If I were a parent and seeing my children behaving this way, I'd go out and get a good stiff belt of something before I tried to deal with it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, as children, we were made in the likeness of God, the gods. We were created in God's likeness and endowed with all of their talents, their skills, and their abilities. And here we are, sitting here, making war, throwing trash at each other. We must be we have to be the juvenile delinquent planet for all of them or something, because we certainly aren't in any way a reflection of our Maker, at least as a whole. I know there are a lot of people that really do try, but are so totally overwhelmed by the greed and the avarice of so many. It's awful.
Well, if they only knew, this is what's really scary about this whole thing. The Jews were bothering Jesus, as they had a tendency to do. And they said, if you're the Christ, tell us you're the Christ, blah, blah, blah. And he said, who do you say I am? Blah, blah, blah. And they go through this long conversation. And finally he says, they wanted to know who he was, and he said, I and my Father are one. And the Jews, this is from John 10:30 and forward. Then the Jews took up stones to stone him. They were going to stone him to death for what he had just said. And Jesus answered them, and he said, many good works have I shown you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? And the Jews answered him and saying, not for a good work do you stone me, but for blasphemy, because that you, being a man, make yourself God. And Jesus answered them and said, is it not written in your law that I have said, you are God? Now, they're fixing to condemn him because of something they claim he did. Now, what he is doing, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find this, because this is in, I think it's in the, let's see. I can't find it. 82:1, is that it? Hold on. Ah, there it is. I found it. He is quoting himself in Psalms 82:6, in which he said, I have said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. He's quoting that verse right there.
Mm-hmm.
Where the God of the Old Testament, which just happened to be him, is saying that to the nation of Israel, and he's telling them that they are God's children of the Most High. And so There is no question, and it is verified, that Jesus himself, Jesus the Christ, the one who this salvation supposedly comes from, says very clearly that human beings are gods.
Well, if you, in the beginning, God made heaven and earth, and in the interpretation, when you get down to it, it isn't God made heaven and earth, it's gods, the gods.
The gods.
It's plural. So if indeed we are children of the gods, I would say we're not doing too well here.
Well,
as a whole, humanity.
You're absolutely right. I would say that we're doing probably the worst job that we could imagine doing. I often wonder what goes on in the minds of people who make these public condemnations of others. But then again, I'm really glad. You see, us having this conversation. Hopefully, if humanity needs some karma, we're sort of balancing out. I mean, what does this do? Does this balance out maybe 8 hours of hatred on the Fox network?
I would hope so, because love can do so many things.
Right.
Love and caring and giving and not being conditional and sharing. I mean, anybody who has accumulated $400 million hasn't shared a great deal.
Yeah.
I'm all for people being comfortable, but if we did spread it around, everyone would be comfortable. I still to this day do not understand why we're sending so much stuff overseas when there are so many people in this country that need it. I do think you should take care of home first and then take care of the rest of the world. But it to me is it's horrible. All of the oil that we drill goes overseas. None of it comes here. We don't use it ourselves. We're selling it somewhere. So what is this whole big thing with oil and gas and everything? We have enough oil in this country to run our own cars and our homes and to not be priced out of existence. We shouldn't have to choose between a full tank of gas and food for a week. And that's what it's coming to for a lot of people. So, I mean, not that I'm going to run for public office, not that I know what to do anyhow. But I can complain. I have a radio show, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, if you want to know how Jesus came back, according to the Bible. Everybody can believe what they want to. I'm just simply stating what the Bible states happened. After his death, Jesus rose from the grave and spent 40 days on the earth, a great deal of that time being unrecognized because he did not look like himself before, which is interesting. Why that happened, nobody's ever discussed. That would be an interesting documentary right there, the 40 days. But they all came together, all the followers came together, the disciples and the apostles came together, and they according to what is said, is they received like a flame of fire on their heads the Spirit of God, and this is what happened to them. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common. And they sold all their possessions and goods and parted them to all men as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. Basically what this is believed is they lived communally. And it said they considered all things that this was socialism. Actually, this is the epitome of egalitarianism, which is the backbone of socialism. And this is what the church actually did. This was the first act. The first physical act of the church was to form a commune and to share the wealth. You say share the wealth on Fox News, and they'll go get the torches.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
The pitchforks.
Well, that and it's, and I don't really like talking politics because I don't know enough to really talk with great expertise.
Well, what I'm saying, don't talk to politics. You don't have to talk to politics. You can tell the politics are wrong because this is what it said Jesus inspired his followers to do, was to form a commune. So anybody who condemns commune is condemning whom?
Yeah.
Christ himself. And so when, all these hippies are right.
Yes, they
Think about it. And all the light workers, everybody who says we need to share and to care and to try to help one another and try to take care of one another, they're right. All of the churches with their prejudices and their bigotry and their fine buildings that are like whited sepulchres that look great on the outside, but on the inside is death and destruction and terrible, horrible things go on. People's minds are controlled by the millions.
Well, before they come to burn us in effigy, Patrick and I are really trying very hard to first of all, let all of you know that those of you who are working in the light and light workers are definitely doing and following the word in the Bible, and not to take it to heart because you're endorsed by what the Bible says. You're following in practice what the Bible taught, so that take heart. You're not going to burn in hell, I don't believe, unless you do something really awful someplace else. And even then, you may just go to the dump. It's important that you understand that people who work in the light, for the light, with the light, that you have a defense here. And Patrick is certainly available to answer any questions you might have. He has a show on, he and I are both on Matrix Radio on Friday nights from 8 to 10 o'clock, and certainly when I can talk him both into, sitting quietly for 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon, I'll get him to come back and talk some more about this because I think he's got the ammunition and the wisdom that all of us really need to understand. It's not Bible study, folks. It's just taking a history book and learning the history and how it was written. And whatever your belief system, apply it to that. But those who practice and love and share with love couldn't be more greatly called a light worker. And you don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to be a mystic. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be and be gentle and kind and caring. On Friday, somebody asked about the Friday show. Friday night, 8 to 10 on Matrix Radio here on Blog Talk. Patrick talks all things paranormal and spiritual. He gets into politics, and he gets into spirituality. And actually, this Friday night, we're talking with Lynn Katai, who saw the UFOs in Phoenix, and it changed her life. And I'm glad, Mary Lee, you're proud to be a light worker. I'd get a bumper sticker, and I think there should be bumper stickers because it's ordinary people like you and like us that are truly the light workers. And we may not get great acclaim for it or any at all for that matter, but that's not important. So long as we're walking the talk and we understand what the word is, that's the important thing. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, well, it was wonderful. And just as long as everybody knows that this applies to every religion in the world, says the same thing. And as long as you just have to remember, if you do it with love, whatever it is, you want to train fleas in a flea circus, you want to do, whatever you want to do, whatever you can come up with to help other people, that's fine. But, it's your decision, and the important thing is it is not what you do that is important. It's why you do it. And if you think, even if you're a hardcore Republican and you think that people need to learn how to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, then that's what you believe. I think you're wrong, but at least if you follow your beliefs, that's the important thing.
Oh, absolutely, and do it with conviction, do it with love and light. I'm sure it is possible to be a politician and a light worker. I'm not real sure that I've seen anybody there yet, but anything is possible.
Well, you never can tell. In this day and age, things are changing. This election should show a great change in the human consciousness here in the United States.
Well, I would like to think so, Patrick. I really would. I'm not really convinced at this point in time, as far as I'm personally concerned. And I admit that beforehand, I don't know a great deal, but frankly, I'd like to fire all of them and start again. But, I wouldn't know how to go about hiring people to replace the people I'm going to fire. So
let's just hope they stay out of our way. That's the important thing.
Yeah, so long as there is nobody's trying to stop us speaking our minds and our hearts, then we're fine. And so long as we're in a country where we can do that, and we can here for now, we'll keep putting it out there. Want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, chat room. You've been terrific. And I will look forward to seeing some of you or all of you on Friday in the from 1 to 3, and then again Friday night. And this Friday we'll be on at 11 o'clock live with Lynn Katai. If any of you have questions, you can call us and ask us in then. For all of that, we thoroughly thank all of you for being here and reacting so beautifully to what we're saying. It's really nice to know we're not alone. And thank you again, Patrick.
You're quite welcome, Barbara. It's always a pleasure doing a show like this with you.
Yeah. Take care now. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
When you've got a lot on your plate, your financial future is the last thing on your mind. That's why Acorns makes it easy to invest for you, your kids, and your retirement, all in one app. Acorns will recommend an expert built portfolio that matches your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. Download Acorns now and give your money a chance to grow. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns fees before investing. Acorns Advisors, LLC is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorn Securities, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com.
All right, we're all set for the party. I've trimmed the tree, hung the mistletoe, and paired all those weird-shaped knives and forks with the appropriate cheeses. And I plugged in the Bartesian.
Bartesian?
It's a home cocktail maker that makes over 60 premium cocktails, plus a whole lot of seasonal favorites, too. I just got it for $50 off. So, how about a Cosmopolitan or a mistletoe margarita?
I'm thirsty.
Watch. I just pop in a capsule, choose my strength, and...
Wow. It's beginning to feel more seasonal in here already.
If your holiday party doesn't have a bartender, then you become the bartender. Unless you've got a Bartesian, because Bartesian crafts every cocktail perfectly in as little as 30 seconds. And I just got it for $50 off.
'Tis the season to be jollier.
Add some holiday flavor to every celebration with the sleek, sophisticated home cocktail maker, Bartesian. Get $50 off any cocktail maker at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.